Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland preview podcast. Against all expectations, Sunderland put in a cracking performance on Saturday to get back to winning ways as Michael Beale's Sunderland defeated Stoke 3-1 at the Stadium Light, and it was all unnervingly quite good. But a win at the Riverside this weekend would do him and the team, and me actually, the world of good as we continue to go in search of a playoff berth. Can we do it? It's been quite a while since we visited the Riverside. It's been even longer since we won there in the league. So I've roped in Jonny from the Boro Breakdown. It's been a while, Jonny. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm really good, thank you, mate. I'm really good. I mean, bar the football this year, I think for the pair of us, I'm doing great. So, yeah, I mean, it was quite depressing to come on now and speak about football for a little bit. We could have talked about something else for just another 45 minutes if you want.
We were talking about my cat's shit beforehand, weren't we? So, because
Yeah,
my
we were.
cat's...
It was really groundbreaking stuff, you know? It was really groundbreaking.
He laid... Should we say he laid an egg before this podcast, which is the third shit flatulent-based comment in a row on a podcast, which is a bit weird. But at least we've moved on from human ones into cat ones. I'll move on swift and fast. First and foremost, we are recording this right at the start of the week. We're getting it in nice and early, so we're well away from everything that's happened on deadline day, which is what will happen come Sunday. In terms of the last game you played, that was also a little while ago, so I feel like we should probably start with transfer deadline day, transfer windows. At the time of speaking, Morgan Rogers looks like he could quite easily be lining up for Aston Villa at the weekend. I don't know a great deal about him, so I'll just ask, how big of a blow would that be if he was to be out on Sunday?
It's a massive blow. It definitely is. You know, I think he's a player who has definitely grown into his time at Middlesbrough, really. You know, at the start, it was... You could sense how Roy was, but he was good talent, and he was also really good at just progressing the ball, really, and getting Middlesbrough into good areas. And it took him some time to get going, but I would say the last 2 to 3 months he's been electric. I've really, really enjoyed him. And if he goes to Aston Villa, then he goes to Aston Villa. It's just one of those things. We've got some. I think we're fortunate in a way that we've got some depth in that position anyway. I think bringing in Azaz from Plymouth has really softened the blow of him going anyway. And for £15 million, which is quoted, which we want, what we want, if we were able to sell him for that, then God, we only bought him for £1 million in the summer. So to make like big profit on that, and all Man City get a little bit of that, but I just think it's just the way it is, isn't it, in the Championship now, and the way that Middlesbrough want to operate has become more sustainable. And again, it's a blow, but do we have options? Yeah, and hopefully, fingers crossed. You know, if we do sell him in a couple of days' time, which is probably going to be the case, we bring someone else in, probably hopefully a forward to help us fire us up to the playoff places.
Looking at Rodgers himself, obviously you never want to lose a good player, and I think we obviously have that with Jack Clark. And without saying, I haven't really seen Rodgers as much, but I think it would be fair to say, based on stats, Clark would probably be the bigger loss out of the two teams at the moment. You have this figure in your head, though, where you think, if Clark goes, I want X, Y, and Z, even though it's not actually my money and it's completely pointless. And I don't know why we have valuations in our head. But for me, like anything less than 20 million on Clark would be not quite the right deal for me based on the sell-ons and stuff. Rodgers has that sell-on as well. Is 15 million about right with the Borough fan base? Would you be more than happy with that?
I'd be happy with that. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. You know, he's only been really good for the last 2 or 3 months, really. You know, it's only now that we're starting to see a player who has got that potential to probably play at the top level. I think with Clark as well, and I agree with you, it'd be a bigger loss because I think Borough are fortunate that we have the options there, but also it feels like there's more reliance on Clark to do something now in Sunderland than there ever has been. I think when you're under Mowbray, it was based on, can we create space in the wider areas, give the Clark the opportunity to do some magic. But now it just seems very controlled. And I would say, I hope you don't annoy people with this, but I would say Michael Beale's turned Sunderland into a very boring Sunderland, which is not particularly great. But in terms of the fee for Morgan Rogers, I would say £15 million is more than what I thought we were going to get, especially right now. You know, like he's only been here for 6 months, and to take it from 1 to 15, it's unreal, isn't it? It's unreal. It's what you dream of. And if you can reinvest it, and hopefully we can. If we can't, then it'll probably be in the summer.
we're here to preview Borough, but that's one thing that always drives me mad. You've had Morgan Rogers for 6 months, he's going for 15. Alex Scott went for 25, and Burnley came in at 8 million for Jack Clark in the summer. Boils my head. But in terms of like players you brought in, yeah, you have been fairly active. Look, you always want your team to be more active because we all like play Football Manager. But Finn Azaz came in from, I think technically Aston Villa, but I think he honestly on loan from Plymouth. That's where people know him from. Scored all those really good goals. Scored against us this season, a good goal as well. Luke Aylands came on loan after 150 years at Leeds. And then Luke Thomas's came in, who we were linked to as well. First and foremost, thoughts on the signings, and then second question, do you need to add more before Sunday?
Signing so far, I'm happy with Finn Azaz. I was happy with Ayling. And I think Luke Thomas has came in as more of a cover signing. I think, with Bangura being out now probably towards the end of the season. The Finn Azaz one was a really good fee, again, for just under £2 million. What he's done already this year has been really good. He's really creative and he just adds, and I think you can never have enough creativity in different players who can create different opportunities for your strikers. And for Luke Ayling to come in as well, we needed a more solid right back. Like, he still kept getting injured. Smith's out for the season as well. So the two signings and the fullbacks that we brought in have mainly been more cover than anything. But for me, Luke Ayling was a smart bit of business. He just looks really solid. I'm interested to see how he copes with Jack Clark at the weekend. Based on how he's currently playing at the moment, I'm not too sure. But I'm happy with him. But then Luke Thomas, he's been in two relegated sides, really, if you think Leicester and where Sheffield United are. He's not really had the rub of the green, and I think it's really difficult to look at him and go, okay, that's his strength. He's going to do this really well. I found it really difficult when we were doing our lowdowns to say, has he been the real Luke Thomas over the last couple of years? And I'm not too sure. So it's a bit of an anomaly sign. I just don't know. But in terms of any more business, I think it just depends on Rodgers going, to be honest. I think if Rodgers goes £15 million, I'm pretty sure Boro, if this has been going on for 2 or 3 weeks now, Boro have probably got some sort of replacement lined up. And if we don't, then we've still got options there. We've still got McGree to come back, still got Silvera to come back. I think Jones is injured now, but he'll come back eventually. I think if we were to bring any more bodies in, I think we would just try and bring in a centre forward, to be honest.
In terms of last game, it's going to be a while since you played last game when we go head on Sunday, because obviously you were knocked out of the FA Cup, I believe, and the team that went through the FA Cup, obviously, I think it was Birmingham. You were meant to play. They were obviously in the Cup. So that game got called off whilst us and Stoke were able to play against each other. So I don't really know how much I can take from your last game, but you're going to be going into the game on the back of that 6-1 defeat at Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final. We aren't Chelsea, let's be honest. And I think I watched both legs, and I said on Twitter, I kind of felt bad. And there'll be a lot of Sunderland fans turning their hair out here saying, what are you on about? But some of us, I genuinely felt quite bad. I was like, well, that's kind of killed the game so early doors. But getting to a semi-final, look, I know the run was easier. I know that. But a semi-final is a semi-final, and I watched the first leg. You've had a few days to sit down, mull over both legs. The first one, obviously, really positive. The second one, obviously not. How is the fan base in the aftermath of that? Because even though it was maybe expected you'd lose against Chelsea, it was a pretty grim second leg, yet a great first leg, and showed you what maybe you think Middlesbrough can be moving forward. And sometimes it can feel like a huge high followed by a massive low. Is it good that the fan base has had this gap in time to process it a bit?
I would say so, yeah. And I would also say that, like, I didn't expect us to go through, to be honest. When we went to the final, I think to get to a final, I didn't expect it. And to go 2-0 down in 20 minutes, psychologically, I just thought we left. Do you know what I mean? We left the stadium, and it was like, oh, well, it's 2-0 now. We're not going to get back into it. We don't have a centre forward on the bench who's like fit enough to come on. We've got bloody load of injuries as well. Like, I think it was like 12 injuries at the time, and it was just like, well, going to fall apart here. And then when you don't have anything going forward, like a centre forward, it's just going to come back if you hit it long. So then you're only forced to play out the box. And we got caught, and I could show you 100 videos of Boro playing out from the back well under Carrick. It just fell apart really against Chelsea, and It is what it is, isn't it? Like, no, it is like it's a very Tony Mowbray saying that, isn't it? But it's just like we didn't expect to go through. We didn't go through. And I get the national press sometimes where they're going, oh, I don't know why they didn't try and chop and change it. Well, we probably couldn't when you look at the options we had. And, it was just a difficult defeat. But I think the fan base have took it all right, to be honest. Like, it was a bit grim, like obviously getting beat 6-1. But let's not forget, like, these Premier League teams now, Chelsea spent £1 billion over these last 2 years. Like, we've only spent, like, I think that squad that we had was only like 20 million or something. So it was just like, well, yeah, that's the gulf in quality we have now in between the Premier League and the Championship. So I think it was realistic, to be honest. I think a realistic expectation we lose, and yeah, it was pretty grim. Like, there's no one likes to lose 6-1, to be honest. So
No.
yeah, it was just I know I felt for Dana. Look, she did the trip to Stamford Bridge, and obviously she wasn't particularly happy on the way home. But I was quite cushy, just being at home because I had the chance to go. And the trains got cancelled. I was in Manchester on the day, and I was going to go to London. Got cancelled, so I was like, I'm just going to go back to Teesside. And thank God I went back to Teesside because that would have been grim, to be honest.
I think you're right in what you're saying about the Premier League games, and that's why the Premier League teams, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to kind of judge from it. It's probably more important to see how the fan base has reacted to it because it pains me to say because we both hate them, but obviously you look at Newcastle side and the money they've spent. And like it did scare me a little bit when I watched their quality against us, and then the gap between Premier League and top end Championship. And then I watched your game against Chelsea at home, and I was like, oh, why couldn't we have more of a goal like that? And I got annoyed. Then the second leg came around, I went, all right,
Yeah,
okay. And both those sides we've mentioned there, from a Premier League perspective, aren't exactly like they're not in relegation trouble, but not tearing up the carpet with them mid-table at the minute, aren't they? So it's that. Does that gap scare you a bit, considering we're both going for promotion? Because it did me, if I'm honest with you.
yeah, it definitely scares me. I think to some extent because like how quickly those teams can turn it on, like just like that. And I think in just a moment, and you go right, okay, well we've got a lot of good recruitment to do here. And who are the anomalies that go up and stay up? Like you probably look at your Brentford, who have just done recruitment so well over the last few years, and that was a 4, 5, 6 year process to get them to where they were. You're looking at teams like Nottingham Forest, who spent hundreds of millions of pounds, probably went past financial fair play to stay in the division. Everton have done the same. Sheffield United have really struggled. Fulham, they do have a billionaire owner in charge, and unfortunately now, like I think teams like say like Sunderland and Middlesbrough now, they've just got a millionaire in charge in a billionaire's game in the Premier League. In the Championship, it's great because everyone's on a similar playing field. Bar obviously, you're looking at Southampton and Leicester. But I would say Ipswich have still got £10 billion owner as well. But I would say it's a real level playing field. But since the gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it just does scare you. Like how easy has it been for Leicester just to keep most of the squad this year stay up and haven't been great, let's be honest. They haven't blew everyone away, but they've just managed to get results because of quality. And I would say with Southampton, it's took them a little bit of time, but they've got a lot better and getting up there. And I think just naturally that talent alone, the wages they can pay out, it's a bit sick. Like, but Middlesbrough were that team of like in the 90s. We paid hundreds of thousands for Ravanelli and Janino, Emerson. We did all that, and you can't do it now, to be honest. Like what we were paying Ravanelli in the 90s is just nothing now. It's nothing. It's like he's on like 70. I think it's like 60 grand a week or something. 600 grand in the 90s. Look at now. It's nothing. Your standard Premier League player get that. So it does scare me, to be honest, Graham. Like if we go up, it's great for that 1 year, but it gets pretty depressing fairly quickly. And that's unfortunately the division, unless the Championship and the League One's League Two just get more of the pie. Unfortunately.
Never gonna happen. Never.
No.
I looked at that Chelsea game and I thought, right, I can't really take anything from that. So I'll ask about the fan base. And I thought, but I'll always be able to tell something from the league form. I can't. So you're not really that hard to gauge. So there's two parts to this, and you'll be able to tell me the answer to this. But your last 5 games, 2 wins, 2 defeats, and a draw. The definition of patchy, I think. How's the recent form been? And because of the euphoria that goes with a cup run, has that affected the league form a little bit? Has that got any reason towards it being patchy?
Yeah, I would say the cup run helped us, to be honest, in the early stages, because at the early point we were really like struggling because brought in a load of players, changed the system a little bit, and it just didn't really work. The cup run kind of helped us find form in the league, which is always a benefit, right? And we've been inconsistent this year because we've had inconsistent teams. I would probably find like I think it was at a high point it was 15 injuries at one point, and it's still double figures who are out and injured. And it's difficult. It's really difficult because you can never get your best 11 out. And I think that's just reflected in how we've played because there's always, if one person comes back, another one gets injured. And I've just never seen a full strength Boro squad yet, I think, this year. And it's been difficult. And I think that's kind of helped with the inconsistencies because sometimes we can be brilliant and then sometimes we could be dire. And then that's just natural with how we've been playing. But you can still see how we're trying to play. Everyone's bought in. Everyone can fill in and play the way that Carrick wants to play. But it's just been, I think the injuries have just killed our season, to be honest. And it's a bit of a cop-out answer. But when you've got squad players in, the squad players for a reason because they can't always show it every single week, whereas the starting 11 can do it more than them, I'd probably say. And that's just hindered us. And away from home, we've been fine. It's our home form that is we've struggled a little bit, which is strange because we were so good at home last year. But there's just teams that have came, they've parked the bus. We've not been able to break them down. We've not had a striker on the pitch. We've not had players who've helped, break the deadlock, and it's just been difficult. We've had really key players injured, and it's took its toll, I guess. But I don't know how it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to be like on Sunday. To be honest, you could get a really good Middlesbrough side, or you can get a really shit one. So, and sometimes it's in the same game. We'll be awful the first half, and then the second half we'll just turn it on, and it'll be like, what are we doing? But I'm just like perplexed as you are, to be honest, Graham. It's probably not what your listeners want to hear, but it's like having a bipolar football team, to be honest. It's the ups and downs. It's insane.
You can it. Like I looked at like even further back, and like if anyone wants to look at Boro's form, it's just it's just games of football that are occasionally won, loan, and draws. There's no like big run of wins apart from like one little bit. There's no really big run of defeats apart from near the start. Most of it pretty much since we last played each other, it's like win, draw, 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 win, lose, lose, win, draw. And I'm like, you can't really make much from that. And as I always am, full of statistical analysis. I looked on Google for my stats, and I see that there's one player who scored 2 goals in 2 games. So that's as far as my statistical analysis will go. But Marcus Force, I think I'm pronouncing that right,
Yes.
2 in 2 league games. He obviously stands out because his name's on the score sheet. But who are the ones currently standing out for Boro? Who should we be potentially concerned with?
Yeah, I'm so glad Marcus has came back because just as Latif and Coburn got injured, Force just reappeared after 4 months out, and he's a centre forward that's been playing on the right quite a lot, and he's definitely a player that I want probably some of the fans to look out for. Really direct, good striker. Probably it was when we did a preview on Marcus when he first signed. Billy from B Solids said he was regarded as the best finisher at Brentford, and which was great. And you can see it really because in the box he always does find the back of the net, and it's really good for him to have. But we just tend to play him on the right, which is interesting. But naturally, I would say there's probably 2 players that I want you to look out for. Hayden Hackney, I think naturally he lets Middlesbrough tick. Everything will play through him. And I'll probably say a centre back as well, which is an interesting one. But Rav van den Berg, like he's just came from absolutely nowhere. Came from Zwolle in the summer. Highly regarded, 18-year-old, and he's just been so good. Like really consistent, hasn't put much of a foot wrong, and he's just playing a lot above his years, really. And it's just nice to have a defender like that come in, and you can kind of see like the price tag in your eyes. You know what I mean? You go, oh, I could probably sell him on for something here, and that's what Borough fans have kind of got to line with. Like they're saying, oh well, we could probably sell Hackney in the summer, which I think he's definitely going to go. You get 15 million for Rodgers, you probably get a fairly decent whack for Rav van den Berg in the next year or so. So it's kind of where we're at. But I would say that they're probably the 3 players I'd want to look out for because the injuries again, it's just difficult. So I couldn't tell you who's going to start up front. Rodgers won't be about. Will we play Greenwood up top? Maybe. It's a difficult one. It really is a difficult one for Sunday. It just, if we can bring in a striker before then, that'd be brilliant. But I would say, yeah, the three players, Marcus Forss, Hayden Hackney, and Rav Vandenberg are probably the players to watch, which is quite nice because it's like one player in, attack, midfield, and defence.
Oh, it's just Jack Clark. In terms of Carrick himself, he's been in charge for sort of 15 months, which is like a long time in the championship, truth be told. But it's also a solid amount of time to probably make a judgment. You're in 11th, 3 points outside the playoffs. If you say the 3 points outside the playoffs, it sounds better than the 11th, but we know what the championship's like. It's tight. I think it's probably away from where you want it to be. But I think, fans can often get on board when they see level of progression and they can see that, things are getting better. There's a plan. I do get the feeling that that's how Boro fans feel under Carrick, but I do want to ask, and I know you can only speak for yourself, but how are Boro fans and yourself looking at Carrick in the first 15 months? Is it seems like the right guy? Is it the right appointment for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like Graham, like I think he definitely has been the right appointment for us at the right time. And I can just, John, you can just see what a manager wants to do. Everyone buys in. Yeah, and last year we were really good in that back end of the season, and it was just so fun to watch. And we started the season off slow, rightly so, and it has been inconsistent, but it's been out of his hands. I'd say more so this year than it has been probably in the previous year, and where the previous year we were really consistent in terms of like team 11. And I would say everyone is still really happy with him. There's always a good 2 or 3% that will be like, oh, well, he should go and get Jose in or something. And, why we spend 30 million on a Brazilian or something. Like, there's always that, isn't there? But I would say a good majority of the fans really like Carrick. If we could have him for another year, then I'd be so happy with that because I could see him going up to the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? I think we've got players that and a manager and coaching staff that are probably could make the jump, but do we have enough of it around the whole place? Probably not. You'd be hanging your hat on like 4 or 5 key assets to really go up and keep them, and then build another 6 players into that. But for Carrick, yeah, like I absolutely love him, Graham. I really, really do. Like we could get beat at the weekends, and I'd still love his football. Still love what he's about. He's got a really good coaching team in there with Danksy and Woodgate as well. So it just seems fairly settled, and I want it to keep settled for another year. And whether he wants to make the jump after that, then so be it.
Interesting you say that because Sunderland fans are probably going to like bang their head off a wall here because we had a good performance, and I don't want to be negative, but obviously the Beale situation hasn't been great. But when you spoke about even when we get beat there, I feel relatively positive about the way we play. Is kind of how I felt under Tony Mowbray up until maybe the end when I went, hang on, maybe we need an ambitious change to go like maybe a foreign manager that'll like get all the younger foreign boys together and get them flourishing and give us like a bit more of a backbone. And Beale came in, and I think naturally, I'm not 100% sure I believe in that as yet, and hopefully, good result on Sunday, and I start believing a bit, but I certainly don't feel the way I did under Tony Mowbray. And I wanted to ask you about Mowbray because obviously he's someone that we both really like. I think in both quarters, especially Middlesbrough, he's loved there as a player. He was liked as a manager. He did a really good job at Sunderland. I'm not going to be revisionist and say that I didn't want him to go when he did, but I was still kind of shocked that he did go when he did. But I'll remember him very, very fondly. From the outside looking in, it seemed like a lot of people went, oh, I kind of understand that, but other people went, oh my God, that's like horrendous. You're a little bit closer to the situation because we're closer in terms of location, and Tony Mowbray means something to your fan base. What did you make of A, us sacking Tony Mowbray, and then B, the appointment of Michael Beale, and C, the kind of fallout prior to maybe Saturday's win that came from that appointment?
On the sacking, I was actually a little bit surprised, to be honest, because recruitment wise, I still think Sunderland lacked a little bit after when the window shut in August. I thought Sunderland could really do with I'd say a centre forward, because you haven't really played one. Could do with a decent centre forward and just maybe 1 or 2 more to try and get you up to where you want to be. And with Sunderland, I'm in the camp of the squad's too young, and you need a bit more to really solidify yourself in a playoff place. Because with young players, it's so up and down. And a manager who gets the best out of young players is probably Tony Mowbray. We've had it, you've seen it at different clubs, and it made sense for him to be there. And you could sense that he was building something. But with Mowbray, you get that inconsistency as well because he has a really good first half of the season and a shit second half, and it's never a consistent all the way through. And I was a little bit surprised, but if you were to sack Mowbray, you need to bring in someone who one gets the fans on board, but two can excite people and have a real like you got to also have a manager who's ready to go. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt like you still had that whole interview process. It was a bit of like a naive decision at the point, but yeah, I was a bit surprised. And then the Beale appointment, he did okay at QPR. And went jump ship. You know, Rangers is regarded as he had a high success in terms of win rate, but didn't really have much to show for it. I think I could have a high win percent rate in Scotland as a manager, and he's came in and I don't get you wrong, but like I said it a bit earlier, but he's made Sunderland really boring, and Sunderland weren't boring under Mowbray. They were a fun team to watch, and for a Middlesbrough fan to say that it's a bit much, but I watched the game against Hull and I was like, wow, this is shit, and you probably deserve to lose the game, and you deserve to lose a game against a side that didn't create anything, because it was just it just didn't create much. And I feel for Sunderland fans to some extent, because when you go from something which gets the best out of your strengths is great, and you can create chances, and you created plenty of them, but now you're not creating much at all, and that's where I'd be worried. But you know, statistics can show like a lot of things where you can have dips, and players again are in that little learning phase at the moment of trying to understand Beale, and it might come good. You never know, it might come good, but I think the way that it currently is right now, I can't see Beale lasting till after the end of the season unless he pulls something out the bag over the next few weeks, because I think it's a bit frustrating. I just don't see it personally. I don't think the Sunderland fans will allow it. But it's not just the manager they've got wrong at the moment. Sunderland, they've got little things wrong, like stupid things wrong, like the Newcastle, that whole Newcastle thing. It just seems that like that there's like something disconnected again. Where after probably last year, it felt very like knitted. Mowbray brings that together, and then you go and hire Beale when most of the fans, I would say, were fairly happy with Mowbray. I might be wrong. Like, good to say 55%, maybe, you know. And yeah, they're just doing stupid shit on and off the pitch at the moment, and it kind of shows on the pitch eventually. So, but yeah, I'm a bit disappointed and surprised, but yeah, I just think the Beale appointment's a bit of a appointment, to be honest.
Yeah, I said Saturday was really good, and obviously I'll be on your show later on, and I will give lots of credit for that because he was part of that performance.
Yeah.
It needs to be more of that on a regular basis, a much more regular basis, hopefully starting on Sunday. I've got a couple of other ones before we go into predictions, you know, standard. I felt it was a really odd game between us at the Stadium Light, and I can't quite put my finger on whether the 10 men just destroyed the second half or we were just really bad second half as well and you took full advantage. So I wrote down what I thought. I thought it was even for the first 45. Then we go down to 10 men, which I think was mental, but the referees tip of the iceberg this year, across the board for every club. We haven't won since September 2005 in the league at Riverside, although there was that FA Cup in about 12 years ago. Based on that game earlier in the year when, to be honest, you took full advantage of us being down 10 men, I would have liked to see us put up a bit more of a fight at that point. And the record that we have at Middlesbrough, how confident are you going into that game on Sunday? Because it feels that you have a little bit of an edge on us.
I would say quietly confident, I think would probably be the word I'd say. It's words I'd describe it. The first game, I think game state matters. You know, what's the game like if you keep 11 players on the pitch? But I think the second half was awful from Sunderland. Like, I think you give you gave the game away that was probably how I took of it. We took full advantage of it, and I would say it was probably on your players, to be honest. Like they just give up. It was really poor from them. And for us, quietly confident, I think we just got injuries. To be honest, Graham, it's just so many injuries, not a striker, and losing Rodgers. It's just like I just don't know. I think we're playing someone at a good time, and you're playing us at a good time. So it just screams a 1-1 draw now, doesn't it? Just 1-1 draw. But yeah, quietly confident, I think, hopefully.
I reckon a Borough's 50%, I think. Been twice when we've won. Weirdly, in that 15-point season when we won 2-0 and Tommy Miller scored before he even sat down. Julio gets a second, and then the FA Cup game, and I had a 100% win record at a point. And the last two times I've been, we've lost, but it has been a while since I think we've even got anything from Borough, to be honest. But I feel like this is a question I guess asked a lot, and I've purposely avoided it because I think it's very subjective. Is it a derby? Is it not a derby? There's a lad in our pod who lives near Middlesbrough. He works with Borough fans, so to him, it's a big one because he gets it a bit more in the neck if we get beat. For me, I don't mind Borough. I'm not bothered. I work for Borough. I think people know that. I worked for Borough for a bit on their women's team. I actually don't mind them at all. So for me, it's not. But I like to win games of football. But instead of asking you, is it a derby, is it not a derby, I wanted to ask it something a little different. And you can only answer for yourself on this one. But what does beating Sunderland mean to you? Maybe in comparison to beating the other team from up there or winning other games? Is it more meaningful for you? Because I know it was for Dana, but I know everyone's different with stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it's nice when you win against something. I think, and it's the same. I think for you as well. Like it's nice to beat us. You know what I mean? It's just like because it's location, it's rivalry. Like there is a bit of spice to the game, isn't there? There's naturally a bit of spice. Like and yeah, like if you win, when you win the games with a bit of spice in them, you tend to enjoy them a lot more, right? So for me, yeah, like I'm happy if we win. If we get beat, I'm like meh. It's okay. We've lost. It's gonna be unbearable on Twitter and YouTube for the next 24 hours. But it just is what it is, isn't it? And I would say though, I'm not up and down about football anyway. In general, now I'm very much just it's a game of football, and I go and I probably go more for different reasons now than just the game. So, yeah. So I would say it's just a bit nicer. I think when it happens because it's just what the game is, I guess.
I like going to the Riverside. I'm going on Sunday, and I went last year, and I like going because I feel like when you're at the game, it feels more of a derby. If that makes
the
sense.
atmosphere is great. Yeah, the atmosphere is really good, isn't it?
Yeah,
For both the games. Yeah.
I think it's a good atmosphere when you're in the game, but it's like when I left, like for example, like came out the game against that lot a few weeks ago, didn't really speak for a couple of hours, just kind of put my head down and just listen to music on the coach back. Got beat off Borough, and I was like, within 20 minutes, I was like, blooming hell. I was more annoyed about the referee decision, but if we'd won, like when we won last year, when Ross scored and Ahmad scored, that felt really funny because obviously it would knock Hughes, and it's a little bit of a poke in the eye. It's relatively funny. So I don't know. It's maybe got a bit more than Leicester away, I guess. And it's definitely better when you're at the game. That said, I'm not confident about Sunday, which is a recurring theme. We've about 2 minutes left here before I'm popping on yours. I'll take us for a draw. We'll do something at the Riverside, so I'll say 1-1.
Yeah, I'll go 1-1 as well, Graham. We'll try and we'll shake hands on the 1-1 and call it a day, I think, for that one.
Shake hands, share a pint, say goodbye to each other. See you next year. Jonny, as always, mate, pleasure. I'll pop all the links to yours below if anyone wants to watch me chatting about something that can. But where can they find you on the socials and stuff like that?
Just the Boro Breakdown on Twitter, and just search for the Boro Breakdown podcast everywhere, really, and you'll find us. We just spawn on your search engines, on your podcast provider, you on YouTube. Just search for that, and you'll find us.
Sure, we will. I'll listen to it if we win. Right, spot on, Jonny. Good to catch up as always, mate. See you in a second on your show when we have another half an hour chat about the game.
Yeah, speak to you soon, Graham. Cheers.